Google training data API lookup costs nothing compared to a Google RAG, grounded data lookup. So it's much more expensive to do. It's much more resource expensive and pounds and dollars and cents expensive as well. So if they can, the more they know from the training data, the long term, the cheaper the product is for them to supply. So it makes sense for them to start learning from where they had holes before, basically.
I'm very excited, listeners. We have a very special guest, but I have to give you a word of caution. I don't think you're going to get anything. You won't get as much out of this unless you actually go to our YouTube channel and look at his presentation, his product. I'm very excited about the future. We're in a world of possibly transitioning from SEO to what we call AEO, which is artificial intelligence engine optimization. So I'm just going to get right into the introduction here and tell you a little bit about our guest. So again, I'm excited and honored to introduce Dixon Jones. He's the CEO and co-founder of InLinks, an award-winning SEO software company recognized for its innovative use of entity-based optimization and natural language processing. Dixon is the leading figure in the internet marketing and SEO community.
Oh, let me stop you there. It's a lovely way to introduce me, but it's fine. I used to run Majestic. I used to be marketing director of Majestic.com. I've been in the industry for 30 years, and let's not bore everybody with all the details. I appreciate everything.
But us nerds will certainly appreciate this. So I'm gonna just continue here, despite I appreciate your humbleness, but these are some serious creds. So now I'll explain this to my wife, and she'll roll her eyes. But everybody else that knows, that's in the know in the community, it's like they say, when you know, they need to kind of hear your accomplishments, because I think it's really important. So. He's received numerous accolades, including a Lifetime Achievement Award in Search, and has been named Search Personality of the Year and an Outstanding Technology Individual of the Year. Throughout his career, Dixon has founded several successful ventures, including Initiative Unlimited in 1989 and Receptional Limited in 1999. One of the UK's first search consultancies, he played a pivotal role as marketing director and later global brand ambassador at Majestic.com, also MajesticSEO.com, where he helped the company earn 2 Queen's Awards for innovation and export. He's also been involved in DHJ Ventures and serves on the board of Zen Intelligence. Dixon is a regular keynote speaker, and this is where we get nerdy, at major industry events like Brighton SEO, PubCon, SES, and SMX, and is widely recognized for advancing the understanding of entity SEO and search marketing. Most recently, and this is really important, Dixon has launched Waikay, short for What AI Knows About You, a groundbreaking tool from InLinks that reveals how major AI models like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and Perplexity perceive and represent your brand. Waikay enables businesses to analyze their brand's AI footprint, fact-check AI-generated information, and benchmark their reputation against competitors, helping brands proactively manage their digital presence in the age of AI-driven search. Again, I'm very excited. And Dixon, if we could just jump into your product, and we can show everybody that's involved in SEO how you're innovating and breaking new territory here.
Thank you ever so much for the introductions, Bob. Honestly, that just went on for. I'm getting old, really. But the Queen's Awards. I mean, I know you guys are in the States and I'm in the UK, but that meant I got to go and see the Queen at Buckingham Palace twice. So those ones I care. You know, they were probably the highlight, and I didn't do that all on my own. So, but thanks for the introductions. And yeah, I'll just dive into Waikay. I'll try not to spend too long on Waikay guides, and we can talk about it and have questions afterwards. Yeah, as you say, it stands for What AI Knows About You. The reason that we built it is because we were looking at the various. There's not that many tools yet that are properly trying to help us to influence SEO, if you like, within LLMs, within ChatGPT, within Gemini, within Claude, etc. And the ones that are there seem to be thinking about it in a way that isn't going to scale. It's kind of trying to take rank check in and just dump it into AI tracking, and we found that didn't work. So we've come up with a different approach, which really looks at the way in which the LLMs are looking at knowledge. And so we're looking at what AI knows about you, where AI is getting that knowledge. Can you fact check that knowledge, and then how can you fill in the gaps in the knowledge and influence the knowledge graph or the information eventually. So there is, by the way, a free account, so you can get a free version if you go to /free, but it's at waikay.io. Impossible to pronounce, impossible to spell, and impossible to see it because it's not even the .com domain. But the fact that it's stands for What AI Knows About You means that you can kind of get there pretty quickly. And what I was going to do was jump in and just do InLinks as a project, and I did it a little bit before. So if it goes wrong, then I'm going to go back to this one. But let's go and try it with InLinks, and what we're going to do with any .com with any brand, what we're trying to do is that spelled right? No, it's not.
Yeah, it's a little different.
InLinks. I got it wrong. Sorry.
Speaking of pronouncing words and names, it's like if Waikay is bad, this is 3x. It's very difficult for people to.
Fair enough. Okay, so I've got it right now. So you've got to choose a market, because we do a bunch of Google search lookups and things, and you can't do that without specifying a market. But that's fine. You're in the United States, so we know it's fine. So what we're trying to do is find out what all the AI knows about InLinks in context to your competitors. So we do need to choose a couple of competitors. These ones look a little bit too generic, so I was going to go with. Was it woolymammoth.com, or have you got a couple of locals that you might want to compete with?
Not offhand, and maybe that's because I I stick my head in the sand too much. But
so I'll tell you. Let me just dive back in, just for the sake of time here. So you choose two, and then you build a project. But I've built the project anyway, and I chose themightymo.com and woolymammothdesign.com. So they're both say that they're based in Minnesota, so I pulled those out. So the first thing that the system does is it asks Sonar, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude, what do you know about InLinks.com? What do you know about woolymammoth.com? And we build a knowledge graph of concepts that are on your website. So we've crawled your website, and we've crawled the other two websites as well. And we've understood all the underlying concepts that those websites are talking about. We then have asked the LLMs, what do they think the website is about? So now we've got two data sets of information, because we pull those down into the underlying, we call them entities, but topics is a better word, really, of ideas. And so we've got this map of things that you've talked about on your website, and the things that the LLM has said you're about. So if we have a look at something with 0 on here, so I've got to explain TD and GR. So training data, TD stands for training data, and GR stands for grounded data. So anybody that's been playing with AI, if you're using Google Gemini, then the chances are you're using it in AI overviews on Google. And so what it's doing is it's blending a pure LLM with training data that it got from a long time ago, potentially, and blending it with RAG, basic search results. It's it's using the training data to get some information about where they need to look, and then it's getting search results to help augment that data on the fly. not everything does use training data or grounded data. So grounded data means it's got a search lookup. So that's why all three of you have got zeros when it comes to Google Gemini as a score. And if I click on it, you can see the actual response. It said, I do not have access to real-time information. That's because it can't do a search lookup, including websites like InLinks. So it doesn't know that much about you. So it's given a score of 0 for you and your competitors. But in the real life situation, Gemini is very good at pulling in its own search results, at which point you do great. And if I click on here, it says some interesting stuff. It says you're a digital design company. It's got a whole bunch of different things here about who you are, etc. And all that is put in. And now we know that you're that it's got quite a lot of information about you. What's interesting, what I found quite interesting in here is that you've got a bunch of facts here. And I saw earlier on something about Sweden. So one of the search engines is finding you and thinking you're a Swedish company. I can't find out which one it was now. Yes, here we go. So ChatGPT has said InLinks is a Swedish digital marketing agency specializing in SEO services. This is interesting, and I think shows exactly why companies need to pay attention to this stuff now, because the machines are hallucinating and they're getting things wrong. And to say that InLinks is a Swedish digital marketing agency is clearly incorrect. You just got to look at the website, and that's not correct. So one of the things that we do at Waikay is make it very, very easy for you to start checking all the facts that are spouted out by all of the AI systems. By the way, you're not alone. InLinks, by the way, it said InLinks was a rank checking service, and we're not. And I did one on Majestic, and it said Majestic was dissolved in 2021, and that's because a UK company called Majestic Wine had dissolved, and it got confused. So this fact checking of AI is an important thing for brands, and the bigger the brand, the more important it is. But even small brands should be checking this stuff. And so what we've done is we've turned all of the output from asking the LLMs in things and turned them into individual facts that you can very quickly go and see. Right, InLinks is a digital marketing agency and website specializing in SEO. Check, that's fine. Fine, off the list, that's great. Vast majority of these are going to be fine, but occasionally you get something that's incorrect, like the Swedish digital marketing company and ChatGPT saying it's wrong, so we can flag that. So you can easily flag ideas. And now these reports, the idea is that you run them over time. So you can run them monthly or weekly or daily or whatever. So when you do run them again, then anything you haven't flagged will just wipe, because otherwise it just becomes too much information. But the fact checking is the first important thing. The second important thing is these numbers. These numbers give you an idea of how accurate the information is in different search engines, both for you and for your competitors. So now we've got some concept of competing brands. Yeah. We can also all of these things kind of come back with a bunch of sources. So, for example, there wasn't one in here, but let's go to Sonar. So here they're saying all the URLs that they're seeing in this response that they're citing as relevant. So we can then have a look at all of the pages that are on in your reports, and they're not just necessarily your own website. There might be other websites as well, but we can check to make sure that they're all there. They're actually redirecting with 301 redirects, which some of your users may not know. I don't know if they know about 301s and not, but let's say they do, I'm assuming. But if there's 404s in there, then that's a clear signal that you've got to change anything. And again, with your competitors here, we can go and start seeing which pages are mentioned in competitors' citations. So, for example, we've got Capterra here with Woolly Mammoth Design mentioned on Capterra.com. That's a signal that says, hey, well, the LLMs are using this Capterra stuff. That's very easy. You could go and get yourself on Capterra, and maybe you can also next time be seen as and use that to get mentioned. So you can start to see some places where you can get your stuff talked about to interrupt the LLMs for next time round.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So It's cool. So now this topic stuff I'm going to move on from, because it gets a lot more interesting when I start to create a report around a concept. So right now, that was a brand overview report, which you could get for free. Actually, you can just sign up and get a free one. But where it really gets interesting, I think, and now I'm working in real time here, is when we start to say, right, what do we want to be better at? So, this is kind of like, if you think about keyword, getting to number one for a particular search phrase in SEO, what you really want is when you ask the LLMs, what's the best search engine optimization company or web design company, then you want, InLinks to come up. That would be the end point of the thing, which I think is, some years off, because we needed to learn a lot about how LLMs are working. But if I choose web design, it'll create a report saying, okay, what does InLinks and those two competitors, what do the LLMs know about InLinks in the context of web design? So now we're not just looking at your brand, we're looking at something much more contextually accurate, or something much more of a business focus. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
Yeah, great. Okay, so again, we're going out asking them to give their responses, and we'll have a similar looking screen at the start. But some extra stuff is going to turn up, which is going to be very, very important. At the same time, we're augmenting the knowledge graph that we've already built about your website. So any web pages that we've seen in other reports, we'll go and crawl those in the background and make sure we understand those, so we have a better view of you as we go on. So the more reporting you do, the more accurate we have an understanding of your actual focus. So while that's going, let me show you this mentions thing as well, because this mentions thing, all of the URLs that have been mentioned so far in those lookups that we've already done are now mentioned here. So this is a good way to go and see, the capped errors and stuff like that. And you can break it down by domains. So you can say, look, that's interesting. Other domains, WP Engine WordPress.org has been mentioned a couple of times. We can see the Mighty Mo is on has got a profile on WordPress.org. That might be an interesting thing if you're a WordPress shop. Other domains here, you get to see the capped error stuff. But now you start to also get an idea of market share from these numbers. Market share in the context of LLMs. So LLMs are mentioning you 18 times, Woolly Mammoth 13 times, Mighty Mo 8 times. That to me is not a bad representation of how well you're relatively represented in the LLMs. So now we've done this web design. Again, we've got scores now. Scores we can dive into, and one of the interesting things now is that, I don't know if you saw on the last one, I went quite quickly, but the Mighty Mo wasn't understood in ChatGPT for its brand. And they had a 0, and they also had a 0 for Woolly Mammoth design, I think. But in the context of web design, the LLMs now understand which Mighty Mo they're talking about and which Woolly Mammoth they're talking about. And they're not talking about just general Woolly Mammoths. They're talking about this one. So they get a much better idea of these businesses in the context of the products they're selling. And that's natural, right? Hopefully, right, if we did what's intrix.com in the context of London, you wouldn't do so well. But because it's in the context of web design, it's got a pretty good result. Again, not in the original training data from Gemini, but 82 out of 100. That's a pretty good score. So we know what it does, and we know. And did you take over Fargo Web Design Company at some point, or is that an SEO page? There we go. So we can see a bunch of facts here, which hopefully are right, but you can flag them again if they're wrong. So, but the great thing here, and I'll stop talking in just a second once I've shown you this button here. This button here is the action plan, and this action plan, I think, is where we really can start the process of actually optimizing within LLMs. So what this is doing is recommending things like topic gaps. And what it's doing is some really fine-tuned ideas for how you might be better represented within the context of web design. And the report is not that long. This is a report. That's the whole lot. That's it. And they're really strong bullet points. So firstly, if we go on to strengths, then we've got InLinks is a strong location-based SEO and web design. You have strong location-based SEO and web design pages. You've got multiple city-specific pages like Fargo. You've got diverse service offerings, technical SEO content, etc. So these are your strengths. This is Mighty Mo's strengths. They've got a good portfolio and showcase selection section, and then Woolly Mammoth, a really good about section, so we can understand where they came from, etc. But now we get onto the content gaps, and we can see a bunch of structural gaps, thematic gaps, what we consider critical content gaps, and then significant content gaps, and then under-mentioned topics. And these, I think, are really interesting, but we can tighten these down even more and go to recommendations. And this comes to 6 things that our tool says that the LLMs think is you would need to get better represented in LLMs for the context of web design. 6 ideas. That's it. Six suggestions. Wow. Only 1 sentence long each. So, for example, around Minneapolis Web Design Service, we want a dedicated Minneapolis Web Design Service page similar to your existing city pages. So you've got city pages. They've surfaced. The Fargo one did. But for some reason or another, the Minneapolis one didn't. I don't know if that's correct. I hope it's insightful. And then develop a comprehensive portfolio page because Mighty Mo or whatever it was created has got a good showcase page. Also, it gets very in detail on existing pages. So on your web design page, it says enhance that existing web design page to include detailed information about the design process, including some research methodology and revision policies. I'm talking very quickly. And expand the current web design content to emphasize the approach. So these 2 things, not as urgent, but we think they're interesting. And then a couple of structural improvements, a bit more clarity in your packages and offerings, and then integrate some case studies into the service pages. So these are not a large number of things, but I think that they're pretty powerful. And then we reduce that even more into here, recommended steps. Do this, do that, and do that. And then if you wanted to go and also get the chances to get listed, then go and have a look at getting yourself into WP Engine's, company agency directory or something as well. So that is it in a nutshell. Did it make sense? And was that interesting?
Oh, very interesting. I mean, I think we're going to talk a bit here about where things are going in terms of search and search engines, and how that transition is taking place, what the timeline is for that transition. That one of the questions I have is what level brand or how relevant is this to, let's say, local, let's say the plumber or the bakery or whatever the case is versus larger entities?
Yeah, I think if you've got content and competitors and you're proud of your business, then it's useful. I mean, this thing only costs $20 a year, so it's not as if we're spending $20 a month, or starts at $20 a month, and that's okay. That's only 8 reports a month, but a small business can do they sell bread and they sell cakes. They want to do that report every 3 weeks or so, every month. So and then see their brand. But what you definitely want to know if the LLMs are hallucinating, because they can pick up data from anywhere. It's not just your website. One of the things with a big company that we found was Microsoft, for example, are blocking Gemini from crawling their content. They've made a policy decision as a company that they don't want to educate Gemini with and make it easy for them to know everything about Microsoft. The irony is that Gemini comes out with perfectly good information about Microsoft, just what everybody else in the world says about them. So they may not come off better because they're no longer in control of their narrative, because they've actively said, I'm not having Google on my site. Thank you very much. And I think that was a well-meaning decision that probably wasn't thought through all the way, and maybe something that they want to revise. It's also a problem that Google's going to have to think about when ChatGPT and Bing starts coming around Google's content as well. But if you can't control your narrative, then you can expect a lot more hallucinations. So, yeah, and yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you don't have to be big, do you, to need it? It may be that you're not looking for web design; you're looking around web design in the context of Minneapolis or something like that, or and so you're further refining the topic that you're actually searching about. You could have typed in any word there to build that report. We suggest entities and subjects, proper subjects that we can relate back to Wikipedia concepts, for want of a better word, but encyclopedia ideas. I think one of the problems that SEOs naturally fall into is that, and particularly small businesses may fall into, is that they come up with a quite a long string of something that's very narrow and unique to them. So yeah, they'll rank number one for it, but nobody's actually necessarily typing that in. But that's what it means. That's what it means. You don't necessarily want to do web design for somebody in Los Angeles because you would rather meet them face to face, because that's what we do in Minneapolis. So you see, I'm a man of the world. I'm a man of the world, and so you don't want to have to always say Minneapolis if your only customer is supposed to be in Minneapolis. The LLM's got to understand that. It's got to kind of get Minneapolis, Fargo, but not Los Angeles. And I think that is an interesting place for us to think. Thinking in terms of what knowledge do you want these LLMs to have, and what do you not want them to have. Actually, we've been playing with the idea that in the future, our about pages may not just say what we do, but they might also say what we don't do, so that we can inform the LLMs to get things clear, so they can see exactly what they are and aren't doing. Let me just turn that TV behind me off.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And oddly enough, we do work in Australia, Germany. Did some work in Ireland, and for a Yahoo Midwesterner, like it's kind of weird that we're doing business all over. But I mean,
all right, yeah. I'm sitting in the middle of a shire town in Shire village in London, talking to a guy in Minneapolis. It's a weird world now, isn't it? It's great.
Yeah, I mean, the world is flat, so to speak, and we employ people all over the world, and because they're talented and and very good at what they do, and I never would have thought that 30 years ago when I started various businesses that my dad's basement, that we'd be talking about these things, and so if I can bring it back to what you see the future, as I I did a little research on Waikay and tried to grasp as much understanding of how this is going to impact things, and I'm very excited. I mean, today I don't think any of us are going to go out. It could, but I mean, and make our fortune in AEO, if you will. But how do you see those search engines shifting? Like, Google's is what, the largest search engine at this point. YouTube's the second.
Which is,
and then all the large language models are gaining traction. What do you see going on there for a timeline, and what do you see?
I think over there's a lot of blending already. So what happened? So the history, as I saw it, the first time I really started paying attention to this was at a conference in Brighton. Only about a month after ChatGPT launched. What was that? Was that 22 or 23? I can't remember. Anyway, not so far ago. Anyway, and it was about a month before, and I was actually sitting next to John Muller in this conference, and this guy talked about LLMs and showed us all the output of LLMs, and I thought, bloody hell, that's impressive. And as we were walking out, I said to John, well, so why don't you take those 10 blue lines and just make a story out of them and do that instead of search results with all the information, but in a story? And he said, oh, I don't think that'll happen for a long, long time. I think that, we're very traditional search engine stuff like that. Look forward 2 years, and then they've got these AI overviews that are pretty much, they're not taking the same 10 blue lines, they're taking different data. But I think what is really interesting in that interim is that the ChatGPT, when it came out, and Gemini's training data when it came out, was fine as far as it went, but immediately it was static data. So the data, unless it starts getting updated, only knows what it knew at the point of launch. So as soon as you change a president, then life changes. So that information starts to degrade in usefulness over time. Also, when these systems initially came out, nobody had any concept of trying to manipulate that background data. So they could take all the books in the British Library and photocopy them, or whatever they were going to do to get their data, proprietary data, public information data, take it all, and all the people that were trying to do things there were not necessarily trying to influence the AI. So it was less likely to make factual errors, because no one had tried to put anything in there to make it a factual error. But at the same time, it did seem to hallucinate, because it didn't understand in that training data that this was an authoritative piece of content on that subject and this one wasn't. So it's going to random pages that may or may not be appropriate, and may not be the best source of information. I think what has happened is that they're seeing that now, and this is why RAG, retrieval augmented generative search, it has already become a big thing. So the LLMs would like to give you a straight answer if they could, but if they're not sure, then they've got the opportunity to go onto Bing or go onto Google or go onto DuckDuckGo or whatever, and pull back some search results to hone in and crawl those bits on the fly to augment the information and give you better data. That gives them, the search engines have spent all that time working out the difference between a good page and a bad page. So they've got this kind of concept of authority in there that the LLMs don't have. So that's reduced some hallucinations, introduced some other problems along the way. But it's already moved very, very fast. So when I went to Brighton 2 weeks ago, and we had the Waikay stand there, we just sort of launched the action plans that week. The stand was really, really busy, and they were all saying, our customers are asking about AI, and it's, the problem with SEOs is, we look at bright, shiny, like, twinkly things, and as soon as something new comes along, everybody wants to go there. Well, something new's come along. We know it's fundamental. We know it's going to change our world. If it hasn't already, it's changing your world very, very quickly, listener. So it's what all the customers are saying they want to focus on now. If we haven't fixed SEO now, well, it's going to change very, very quickly now. So let's just focus on the next thing and go there, because I think as human beings, we are already starting. A lot of us in this industry, and I'd imagine a lot of people just who do not do any tech stuff at all, are starting to press things into their computers. I saw Facebook has come out with a llama, but you can ask llama. So basically, if you've got Facebook, you can now ask llama anything in Facebook, for example. Well, that's an AI doing its thing. So this is coming to a phone near you, whether you like it or not, and you won't even know that you've changed your habits. So, of course, businesses need to stay on top of this because you do not want your, your bad reputation, a bad reputation to be propagated. The LLMs learn in a very similar way to humans, in that we just listen to the wisdom. The wisdom of crowds can go terribly wrong. We all know that, and so you don't want a person who is perfectly interested in buying your product to ask a machine that in between misinterprets the product and then gives a different representation of yourself. That could go terribly wrong, and it's something easy to track right now. And oftentimes it's easy to fix right now. I said that InLinks was seen as a rank tracking service. We tracked that back to the original LLM output that had said it. It turned out to be a website that I had never heard of, that had done a mostly positive review of InLinks. And so I asked my VA to reach out to them, see if they wanted to, but they put this false feature in there. She reached out to them. They immediately changed it. They wanted accurate information, and it was the easiest fix that I'd ever had, actually. And job done. Some of the fixes are not going to be that easy, but some of them are. So it's already here. I think it's already here.
Yeah. So to your point, on some of it's about protecting the knowledge base, right? So or affecting it, or making sure that the knowledge base is pure. I have a couple of small businesses, and we created a phone voice AI. So when you call after hours, it can navigate and give you pricing and set up appointments and everything else. And that was a struggle. It took probably 3-4 months because we just chose the website as the general knowledge base, which was a huge mistake, because there's 600 pages. There's blogs, articles, and stuff that the AI got confused and pulled information from that, versus a very contained knowledge base. So this is our opportunity with your tool to go in, manage our knowledge base, and where it's hallucinating, like you said, go in, change what you can, because the struggle is going to be other people's websites and articles that you can't necessarily control that, but you can do what you can to affect that. So, and to your point, this, I came across you based on, just by happenstance, listening to another podcast. I think it was Edge of the Web, um, and basically, um, did some research. And in that time, while I was doing that, a client reached out, a medical clinic, and said, "Hey, what can you tell us about AI, managing AI information?" And da 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 da. And it was just perfect timing. But to your point, this is gonna go crazy, because I'm gonna hand this podcast out to a bunch of my constituents, and they'll have you on their podcast, and we all need to get educated on this as quickly as we can.
I'm delighted, because I think before we can make too many recommendations as to how to manipulate it, we've got to first, or influence it. I should say influence, not manipulate, shouldn't I? Search engine manipulation. It's SEM, SEO. Anyway, before we can absolutely come up with all the things that we know about SEO. So SEO, we know that the H tags are important. We know that the structure is important. We know internal linking and external links, in and out, are important. We know citations. So we've got a pretty good idea of things that we have to do, because people like you and I have been in the industry a long time, and and we've learned by trial and error, and But this LLM stuff is really new. The LLMs themselves are learning in a manner which is very hard for any human to comprehend. But we can still start to record information and understand patterns and behaviors. So we've seen some really interesting things. We've seen, for example, some of the because we're making a lot of API calls and LLM lookup calls now. And some of the times they show their reasoning. So they're showing their reasoning and logic and some of the things. What we've seen is some of them thinking in a different language. And that I found very interesting. Because when I think about it, thinking in Chinese characters is a lot more efficient than thinking in English, because there may be more characters, but they mean more concepts, and so they can actually get to a reasoned point in a different way. But it's not always English. I've seen Spanish in there as well. So, sorry, it's not always Chinese. I've seen different thought processes, and they've just jumped into thinking or showing their thinking in a different language, and that's kind of weird. Maybe it's because we're outside the US and we're sort of, my business partner's French and stuff, so we kind of see stuff. But I don't know why I saw Spanish or Chinese, but I've definitely seen these in the thought processes. So they're thinking in bit weird ways. But so I apologize to anyone that's listening only, because I'm going to use my hands now. But when an LLM is asked a question, what is, give me 10 good web design companies in Minnesota, then it'll start by taking that in, turning it into its underlying constituencies. What are we talking? We're talking about web design and Minnesota, really, and good, or best, or some concept of best. So those three things. That's however you phrase a question, it can break it down to that concept. At which point it can start by saying, well, okay, let's go and look up a directory of companies in Minnesota and see which ones are web design companies, for example. Or it could say, right, let's go and have a look at web design companies and then see which ones are based in Minnesota. Or it could say, you know what, let's go and have a look at the concept of web design and what it means to be good at web design, and come up with things like UX and these kind of concepts and stuff, and then see which ones of those ideas then are mapped onto the web design companies I've seen in Minnesota. So it's got these different thought processes, and they run parallel thought processes just like a human does, well, a little bit like a human does. And then as they go to the next layer, the next layer, the next layer, they're kind of looking up more and more information. And we as businesses and as optimization experts have the opportunity at every layer, as long as we know the sorts of things they might be talking about, which is what hopefully Waikay is trying to do in the topic gap stuff. We can say, you know what, the reason that you need to talk about this page over here, this concept over here, is because at least one of the LLM processes with one of the competitors, it went through that process and was talking about this concept, and it seemed important to the LLM on this occasion. So why don't you interrupt it and write some content about this? Because it's part of the thought process. And then when it gets to what's the best, my hope is that eventually it will say, well, I've kept on coming to this brand as I've been doing my thinking process. I'm going to put them on the list.
Yeah, I just think it's one of these things that probably, I'm guessing a year from now, there's going to be somebody in my company that this is all they do. They monitor this for a client or all our clients, and it's part of our service.
I think that's going to be step number one. So you've got to monitor it first, and you can't make realistic ideas of what to do until you monitor it and see what's consistently coming out as incorrect in the LLMs, or where it's making mistakes, or seeing where there's clear opportunities. The LLM has not seen this part of your service offerings. How can we make it more obvious to the LLM for next time? And then there's a whole new thing about that training data, for example. So Gemini, in the example we go, none of the three were in the Gemini training data. I did one yesterday for Nike, Adidas, and Fila. I don't know if you know Fila, but anyway, it's three footwear companies, and Nike and Adidas were in Gemini's training data, but Fila wasn't, for example. And they're a big company, and they've been around a long time, so it's everyone's problem. But eventually, Google is going to want to update its training data. So we need to be thinking about that now as optimization people, because back in the day, Google used to update its index once a month. And we all called it the Google dance. And we just waited for it to happen. And it took a week to do. And we could see all the rankings going up and down, which is why it's called the Google dance. And so we were always had two sets of, two opportunities to optimize. One, got to get indexed. Two, got to get to the top of the search results. This getting indexed part, if you aren't indexed, you're never going to get to the top of the search results. And that is already the way with training data versus RAG, retrieval, search-based grounded data. And clearly, if you ask an AI, what is 7+2, it doesn't need to do a search lookup. It knows the answer and it doesn't have to go there. The more complicated the query, the more chance it's going to need to go to a search lookup. But if you're already in the training data, then you've got much more chance of being represented in the search lookup some way, shape, or form. And so it gives you a double shot at the cherry, I think. Two shots of the. I'm mixing my metaphors, but two shots of the.
Can you speak to the training data piece? So I'm a little confused on how well, not and I think people are going to want to know. Obviously, it seems like people are getting into the various large language models fairly easy, but the training data seems to be a trickier deal. Obviously, for an entity such as Fila, which is huge. I mean, how would you, if they were your client, how would you go about saying this is what we need to help get you into training data?
So I'm unable to say for sure this is 100% the way to do things, because we don't know whether ChatGPT or Gemini, or when ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude are going to completely give you a new set of training. It's like they're going to have to go in physically, put in new hard drives with the new data on the systems. But what we can do to help that along, and what we're doing in the Waikay product, and what I think other people should be doing as well, is asking lots of questions around the topics that you're talking about. So what your product is. So if you're a bakery, ask about, cooking bread and baking Victoria sponges and, Bakewell tarts or whatever. Find out all of the places that they're saying they're getting their data from, their sources from. That gives you a really good smattering of places that they think that they want to read to be able to get data. And if I was running this training data versus grounded data approach, I would be saying, well, I've got to get new URLs to check to put in the training data next time round. A good place to go will be the ones I had to get to but didn't have when I had to do a search lookup, because search lookups costs an LLM a lot of money. And I know this because we have to pay for all the APIs, and doing a Google training data API lookup costs nothing compared to a Google RAG, grounded data lookup. So it's much more expensive to do. It's much more resource expensive, and pounds and dollars and cents expensive as well. So if they can, the more they know from the training data, the long term, the cheaper the product is for them to supply. So it makes sense for them to start learning from where they had holes before, basically. And so that's a good data source to look at. Even if you don't succeed there, it's a good data source to look at because the search results are bringing that information back. So you still want to be in there even if you don't get into the training data. So I can't at the moment say, hey, ChatGPT updated its training data yesterday. I think we will get there. I think Dan Petrovic from Dixon SEO is running a tool called AI Rank, I think it's called, which is trying to take all the data, and then he's hoping to get some signals of when everything might be changing. So when they might come out with new models. I think we'll try and get to a point where we're trying to do that as well. But for sure, they can't continue to not update their training data. Some people are good training. I think ChatGPT is augmenting its data because we're starting to see, a week or two later, the numbers on ChatGPT were saying 0, and then they suddenly drop and come up. So they're updating their data as they go. Gemini seems slower to update that, but it doesn't need to because it's got Google search results to back it up. But I can't tell you how every LLM is going to work because everybody's innovating so fast that to say it's always done this way is tempting fate, because as soon as that happens, someone will prove you wrong.
So we're getting towards the end here, but I wanted you to touch on if there is a topic in terms of where do you see your product evolving? What features are you hoping to are you working on? This is a relatively new product, right? It's only been out
Yep.
for a period of time. Where
Yep.
do you folks
So
want to head
the
with?
things that we were taking some feedback from having a stand at Brighton SEO. One of the things, although I didn't show it here because it just takes a couple of minutes, uh, we actually build this knowledge graph of your website when we're starting a project, and everyone was saying, "I want to see that," and it didn't appear in the end product. It was just on something to keep you entertained whilst we were
Right.
building the thing.
Right.
So that's coming out actually next week. So the reason I didn't show the topic stuff right at the bottom is that's going to turn into a nice little bubble graph of topics that represents your brand and things that your competitors are talking about that you're not, and stuff like that. So a nice little thing there. So that's coming out
That'll be
Monday.
huge.
We try not to launch on a Friday because just in case it goes down over the weekend. We've had requests for sentiment analysis. They like the fact checking and stuff, but they'd like to know whether the facts that about it are saying good things about your brand or bad things about your brand. We're not so sure how useful that will be in practice, but if customers are asking for it, we got to react with that. So that's an important thing. I think those are the two urgent things, but I think we have to acknowledge that the technology is changing so fast, and of course, when I started in SEO, Alta Vista was a big player in town, and Yahoo was chasing them, and so the world tends to contract into bigger organizations at some point in time. So you can see the two mammoths are, ChatGPT and Google Gemini, and then there's Claude and Perplexity and stuff. But then, Grok's got its thing out there. There's DeepSeek with the Chinese. There's Llama in Facebook and stuff. They're all playing the game,
Right.
and they're going to be trying to eat each other up and spit them out because they're going to have those big fights because there's big money in here, but there's also big costs to the losers, because they're putting huge amounts into these things. So I think just measuring as much as we can, but making sure that the action points make sense to a business in human terms is where we really want to focus. And so the action plan in the example I showed you, hopefully these are on point. And not overly, assumptive, or presumptive. If we go too far, then I think we'll come a cropper, as we say in England. But the other developments are going to be people want multi-user access, so they've asked that already. Large organizations want credit facilities. I hate that. I hate large organizations. Get your credit card out like all the rest of us. Pay in advance. As you go. I'm happy. You can cancel this stuff at any time if you don't like it, but do not make me take 45 days to take your billions, Mr. Bezos, whatever. Just get your card out. You make us do it. You can do it as well. That's my
right. Well, and
sorry, I've got on a little personal rant there.
No, and I, as a business owner, I've had large organizations do that to me, and I'm like, fine, it's 10% more.
Yeah.
It's interest. At the end of the day, it's a money game, and
yeah,
we'll play the game, but your product is now 10% more. So,
and I'd love to pay 6 months in arrears with Netflix subscription. It'd be great, no problem.
Yeah, and I think my wife would too. So. But ultimately, so that's exciting. I mean, I really see this as for agencies, for individual businesses for sure, right? And to your point, try it. And if you're not getting anything out of it after a few months,
if you don't like it, you've spent $20. That's you're not
right.
And if you do like it, right? You can just leave it there tracking. And it will build up a bit of picture over time, and then when you got time to really pay attention to it, or somebody comes along and says, hey, I've just seen this company down the road who's gone bust because everybody thought that they closed down because that's what it said in the LLM.
Right.
That's when you want to pick up and say, I need to make sure that's not happening on my site.
Yeah. Well, and I see this as, I own a couple of small businesses, and obviously I have the agency, and I'll talk with my team, and like, we're going to do this, and we're going to start to present it as part of our core reporting every month or quarter, depending on the client, and saying, okay, we started doing this, and then just see their reaction, and then it's a feature. It's all labor, so if we have to adjust things, we charge accordingly. But
That was another thing that we, you talked about the roadmap. Where are we going with that? One of the other things that we were asked to do was to, create those reports out in a way that they could put into Looker Studio or into some kind of thing. So we're going to create the ability for you to have one of those, Google Docs links, so you could just give the link straight to the customer, so they can see their action plan and see what they're going to do.
Right, that would be fabulous. And like most of our reports we give customers, they do better with graphs and big pictures, and that's true for me. So versus spreadsheets and minutia, so to speak.
Yeah. You got to people need to know the why as well as the what. You can't just give people a list of things to do. I mean, how many of us in the SEO industry have written these audit reports, given them to a customer, and then 6 months later, not a single thing has been looked at, done, or possibly even read. I don't want that to be the case with our products.
So let's the last couple steps. Let's review pricing, if that's all right, and then how we get in touch with you, and then all the URLs and everything that's relevant.
So the way that the pricing works, as I say, there is a free version. It'll just give you your brand report, and it won't give you that action plan. But it'll get you up and running and see the feel of it and see just how easy it is. Upgrading is all done online. It's literally press the button there that's in front of you. And if you want to cancel, that's just there as well. I learned from InLinks. InLinks, we said, contact us if you want to cancel. That really annoys customers. We programmed it now. It's kind of like, I wish we'd, and it annoys me as well, because every time somebody cancels, it hits me in the heart, So I just want, if people don't like it, press the button and off they go. But the $20 will give you 8 reports a month. Now, a report is either one report 8 times, or different topic reports less frequently. So if you're going to try and do this report every day, so some rank checking people will check their rankings every single day, well, that's going to be quite expensive, because every time you've got to run one of these reports, we end up having to make 15, we've got 5 engines, three companies, 15 lookups, all costing money. So basically that's going to come down to the bottom line. So we've got packages where you can upgrade, from $20 a month to, what's the next one up? $60 a month or $70 a month or whatever, and then so you $199 a month, and you get more reports for the month. But essentially, each report, if you think about it, is going to cost $2 to $2.50, depending on how much you're spending. And if you don't want to upgrade that subscription service, you can just go in and buy 50 reports and then use them as you go. So that's we've tried to make it really easy for not just small companies, but small tasters, people that you could be a massive organization, but still the only thing you do is shipping containers, so you could be Maersk shipping containers, and all you want to know is shipping containers, and that's your single topic. So your brand, and that's fine. But I didn't want to make it just because you're a big company, you've got to give us lots of money, or just because you're a small company, you can't go and use the system. That the actual cost is in doing those API lookups and creating those reports. So let's make it so that, yes, we get a little subscription, but the more you use it, the more you'll pay, and then you can go and easily change those reports from monthly to weekly to daily if you want. So if you suddenly decide, we now need to be really well known for shipping containers, because it would appear that this other shipping company is taking over the world, then you can just do it for a day, or go for a few days on a daily update, see if you can make a material change, and then put it back down to monthly, so you've kind of got some information there. So you can spend as much as you want. If you're an agency, there's no limit to the number of projects in there, so you can just put in a couple of things for each of your clients, and then say, look, we think you need a lot more than these, but here's a couple to keep you going. We'll invest $5 a month for each of you, to show you a few things. And once we've got that free link that you can give to people, that would be nice, because they don't have to try and log in or anything. But yeah, I think my hope is that companies will at least generally have 4 or 5 concepts that they want to start tracking, and then hopefully they want to do that either monthly or weekly. But that means that they're going to start to grow as they have more trust in the reporting.
Yeah, I really like your pricing. It's fair. Obviously, it's scalable. You can scale it up or down, right? And depending on your season of business.
The downside. We've got a competitor out there called. Hang on. Oh, sorry, my blue tack. I mean, sticking things on walls. So we got a competitor out there who's going for the enterprise market, shall we say? And we think we got a better product. I won't mention them because it's but we think our approach is better. We've actually put in a patent for this scoring mechanism. We think it's quite clever, the idea of blending knowledge graphs, and they're one of those companies where the pricing is so much you can't put it on the website. You've got to contact us to even get
really
the price. And that's going to happen quite a bit, and I think that's an insult to innovators. I think that's I don't like it. But what it means is, when a large organization comes and sees our pricing starts at $20, they immediately think, oh, these guys don't, that's a cheap product. That's well, they're gonna lose to the innovators at that point. The ones that do that. Not all of them, of course. We've already got some big brands in the system, so I'm quite confident that we'll get over that hurdle. But as soon as you make a cheap entry price, you suddenly have all these brands who who think it must be not for them. So I've got that battle to work with.
Yeah, but I think you'll overcome it, because it's again, more exposure we can give you. And again, it's fair. I mean, it's logical. I guess that's the phrase I want to use. It's a logical pricing.
Yeah. It's a logical pricing. Yeah.
Right. It's just like, no, do you get a great discount for using more? Maybe a little, but the reality is your cost is fixed. It's not like, the API cost is going to drop tremendously,
Oh yeah, it's not. It might go up. Right? And the downside is if ChatGPT put their prices up, like, 200%, I might have to pass that on to the customer, because I actually have to pay that price. But yeah,
somebody's got to pay for the nuclear power plants that drive these data centers and everything else. It's just the fact the way it is. So
it's how it is. Yeah. So.
Well, this is exciting. We'll put a link to your product again. I mean, you can.
I'll say it for the podcasters. It's remember, it's what AI knows about you, which is why it's called Waikay.io. It stands for what AI knows about you. It's .io, and the LLMs know who we are now. So if you type in Waikay to ChatGPT, it'll probably get there. I hope.
Yeah, I saw that.
Maybe not the training data for Gemini though. Not for a while.
Right. No, I saw that. It was pretty interesting. Well, I really appreciate your time, Dixon, and hopefully down the road we can have you back. Again, there's going to be evolution of your product. You're going to have more features. I'm sure our listeners will love to, and viewers will love to see that. And again, I'll spread the word to other people in the industry. Hopefully, you can get on their various podcasts and get this. Because it's a huge value to our clients, and at the end of the day, that's the business we're in.
So. We hope so. Yeah, we really want to be the market leader in this now, and that's another reason for going with a low starting point, because we know that there's a big land grab out there for tools around this kind of thing, We don't think that many people have got the ability to add a value layer in the product. They're just kind of just asking API, but they don't have something like our entity knowledge graph system that came out of InLinks, which is at the core of the methodology. So, but time will tell. If I'm not here in a year, I failed.
Well, I don't think that's going to be the case. So, I mean, you know too much, and I know it's a need. I know it's a need because our clients are telling us that. I mean, we wouldn't be here in this interview if nobody said anything to me or our clients never said anything. It'd be like, that's nice, but they're asking for it, and if they need it, then obviously we're probably a year behind, so to speak. So, but we'll catch up.
Thanks very much for your time, Bob. I really appreciate it, and thanks to your listeners for staying this long.
Thanks again, Dixon. We'll see you now.